Come on, hurry up, Javquar said excitedly, as Thomas brushed his teeth with increased fervour. Wait a minute, he said, his words muffled from the unexpectedly foamy toothpaste. Thomas could only guess it was because Kragavax had a lot of teeth. He finally finished brushing, rinsing his mouth and hurrying out the bathroom. I'm ready, Thomas called, and he walked downstairs to see Javquar and her father waiting for him by the door. He joined them, and they all walked out of the house and down the sidewalk. I explained a bit during breakfast, but I'll elaborate further now. Gravenka has lots of wildlife reserves where you can hunt prey. They're used for social and recreational purposes, but also just to catch food, Mr. Adair explained to a deep-in-thought Thomas. Do you get guns there, or something? He asked hesitantly, and Mr. Adair chuckled. You can, but most prefer to hunt the old-fashioned way, with claws and muscles. The Kragavac flexed his scaly arms, a big grin on his face. As Thomas thought, a sudden realization hit him. If they can take on their fauna in hand-to-hand combat, shouldn't I be able to as well? Thomas laughed internally as he prepared himself for a little test. Once they had arrived, Thomas took some time to look around and enjoy the scenery. Wherever he looked, there were massive trees and grassy fields of exotic plants and animals. It had a surprising amount of similarities to New Britannia, but just not quite. Javquar had handed him a locator beacon that he had put in his pocket. He wasn't expecting to get lost, but it was always good to have contingencies. The first thing he wanted to do was see if he could properly hunt the weird-looking mammals Javquar had shown him pictures of, Frantara. They had agreed to let him hunt alone for a little while, just so he could see how he'd do. Thomas moved silently through the trees, his childhood in the outer population areas of New Britannia coming in handy. He ran through the trees quietly, using the lower gravity to his advantage, until he saw a small herd of Frantara. They looked like New Battalion deer, only much lankier, with smaller ears and a longer tail. Deciding to take a stealthy approach, Thomas began crawling towards the herd, his small size hiding him easily in the tall plants. Now, no more than 10 feet away, his hand came across a fist-sized rock, and he got an idea. Gripping it tightly, he exploded upwards and threw the rock as hard as he could at the nearest Frantara. The animal swayed gently for a few seconds before collapsing, a large dent in his skull. The rest of the herd wisely ran off, and Thomas ran over towards the creature. It didn't move, and he managed to pick it up, hoisting it over his shoulder. I got one, he yelled cheerfully, as he ran towards the gawking Javquar, her father also stunned. Around a minute earlier. Mr. Adair watched as Thomas crawled along the ground, slowly inching his way towards the pack of Frantara. If he was going to be honest, the scene looked downright comical. Such a small and unassuming creature hunting down such large prey. It wasn't common for a Kragavac, even a distinguished one, to hunt such a beast. It was a well-known fact that they could easily outrun some of the fastest of his species. It was then that the small mammal leapt to his feet, not even running towards the herd. Gavin thought Thomas was stupid. Why would you spend all that time being stealthy only to reveal yourself for no reason? His annoyed huff of disapproval turned into a choking splutter as he watched a small stone leave Thomas's clawless hand, launched at blinding speed. Before he could even comprehend it, a loud crack echoed through the forest, and the Frantara was on the ground, a sizable dent in his head. What was that? He thought. Only to be shot once again as being arguably half the size of the Frantara casually picked it up and threw it over its shoulder. The only thing left going through his mind was wondering what the little Hellworlder would do next. Did you see that? That was awesome, Thomas exclaimed, stopping in front of Javquar. Javi, he teased, and Javquar snapped out of her stupor. How'd you do that? She stammered, and he shrugged. I'm not going to lie, I got pretty lucky there. So are we continuing, or do I take this back? Thomas asked. Dad? Javquar turned to Mr. Adair, who had composed himself. That's enough, I believe, he said curtly. Alright, let's head back, Thomas said excitedly, energized. The three of them began heading back, getting lots of stares as they did so. Since other alien species never visited Kragavacs, his appearance itself was already rare. But now combined with the fact that he was carrying an animal corpse twice his size over his shoulder. Out of the corner of his eye, he could see people taking photos of him, but he didn't really mind. As Thomas walked into the city, the attention to him grew, and a small crowd began to form around him. Did you catch that yourself? How are you carrying that? Is that real? Thomas could only nod in response to the questions, tired from holding the Frontera. Javka and Mr. Adair were also getting asked questions. Is he adopted? What species are they? They're a human, I think. By the time they had reached Javka's neighbourhood, there was a sizable amount of onlookers, taking photos, recording, when suddenly the Frontera began thrashing violently in Thomas's grasp, and he realised that he hadn't checked if it was actually dead. Wiggling out of its grasp, the creature crashed onto the bio-road, letting out demented shrieks of agony as it floundered around. Feeling sorry for the animal, Thomas decided to put it out of his misery, rushing over and pummeling his head wound after a brief moment of hesitation. Gripping the Frontera's neck with one hand, he both mercilessly and mercifully beat it, with sickening thwacks and crunches. While he was strong, it didn't seem to be strong enough, and so he began to strangle it. Wrapping his fingers around the Frontera's thin, furry neck, he squeezed, begging that the creature would die quickly. Of course, it didn't. The animal seemed to realise its imminent death and struggled harder, kicking out and hitting him several times with his hard hooves. To avoid its blows, Thomas scrambled behind it, putting it in a headlock and squeezing as hard as he could. The animal rolled and thrashed around, but Thomas held on, and his grip tightened. There was a loud, resounding crack, then the Frontera went limp. Thomas slowly stood up, gingerly feeling the bruises he had gotten from the kicks. Well, that was certainly something, Javka, he chuckled boisterously at the absurdity of what had just happened. But Javka wasn't looking at him anymore. She was looking at something behind him, and Thomas turned to see what. He was staring directly into the camera of a news crew. Not really knowing what to do, he smiled and waved, blood dripping down his hand.